Hi everybody, welcome back to the City Limits Stand-Up Desk. I'm Jarrett Murphy and I'm here with Caroline Nagy from the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, where she's the Director for Policy and Research. Caroline, thanks for coming. Tell us first just a little bit about the center and your work there.
Sure, thanks for having me, Jarrett. So the Center for New York City Neighborhoods is a nonprofit that works to promote and protect affordable homeownership in New York City. We've been working since 2008, really at when the foreclosure crisis really hit New York. And since then, we've served over 50,000 homeowners. We've traditionally had a focus on foreclosure prevention, but as time shifts and as the foreclosure crisis begins to recede, we're looking more broadly at affordable homeownership generally, how to keep in place existing homeowners who are lower or moderate income and their tenants, as well as ensuring that there are future homeownership opportunities for families in New York City.
And are you doing like direct service, like counseling, or more on the policy advocacy front?
We do a lot. We work with community-based organizations, about 30-some throughout the 5 boroughs, to provide for foreclosure prevention, housing counseling, and legal services. We also administer the Mortgage Assistance Program, a loan fund that provides interest-free loans for homeowners in foreclosure so that they can cover their arrears and obtain a mortgage modification. We have a full-service call center called the Homeowner Hub, where homeowners can call us. They can either call us directly or call 311 and get connected to expert assistance as well as referrals. And a few other things. We also do a lot of work around Hurricane Sandy, and now that we're moving from recovery to resiliency, we do a lot around flood resiliency, the National Flood Insurance Program reform, and thinking strategically about how we can work with lower and moderate income homeowners in flood-prone neighborhoods to make them safer and keep in place to the extent possible.
So let's talk about the foreclosure crisis. I guess we can still call it that.
Yes.
A lot of people talked about that a lot, 2008, 2009, 2010. We haven't talked about it as much since. What's the status of that in the city now?
So the foreclosure crisis is not over in New York City. While foreclosures have receded from the absolute peak following the crisis, we're still at a much higher foreclosure level than we were in 2007. And that's due to a lot of different things. A number of homeowners who we're working with actually got caught up in the initial crisis, and they're still seeking a resolution to their foreclosure. So some of them have been working with their attorneys or housing counselors for several years.
This shows up in the numbers because you see
Yes.
a lot of repeat foreclosures, or people going for a second time because they had a problem, they got help, but then that help ended up not being enough.
Well, repeat foreclosures is it really depends on how you look at it. A lot of what looks like a repeat foreclosure is actually the same foreclosure because they need to be refiled every 3 years. For homeowners who are kind of redefaulted, we can still work with them, and a lot of them are actually able to remodify their mortgage and stay in their home. We're also working to provide more financial literacy counseling to help them have more of a cushion to withstand some of the shocks of keeping a home, being a homeowner in New York.
The Fed talking about raising interest rates, do you think that will have an effect on homeowners who are close to the edge in New York, those who are on variable rate mortgages?
We'll see. I mean, most of the homeowners who are in the absolute worst mortgages have managed to modify since and have gotten locked into much lower rates. Obviously, with rates increasing for modifications, that means that they will be paying slightly more per month. So it's definitely something to be concerned about, as well as the expiration of the Obama administration's home affordable modification program.
I wanted to ask about that. So obviously not just the Fed making changes, obviously new president now, Obama did take some action on the foreclosure crisis, obviously. Any signals from the Trump administration, good or bad, on what they might do, if anything?
Sure. So we'll start with the foreclosure crisis. A number of agencies, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the CFPB and FHA HUD have issued new guidance for modifications after the HAMP program, and they tend to be more streamlined modifications, which go towards a reduced payment. For some homeowners, it's a faster process and it can lower their rates. For others, not so much. I think on the new homeownership side, the very first policy move that the Trump administration did on January 21st was to cancel a move to lower FHA mortgage premiums. And what that means essentially is for homeowners who use FHA loans to buy their homes, which is most first-time homeowners in New York City. And in communities like the Bronx, the vast majority for mortgages that are used to purchase homes. That means that they're going to be paying several hundred to $1,000 more per year, and that's another way that these so-called like affordable mortgage programs, which have lower down payment requirements, can actually make things less affordable for homeowners.
When the crisis was at its peak here, there was a lot of talk about particular neighborhoods, Southeast Queens, Canarsie, the Northeast Bronx especially. The way you see the crisis playing out now, does it have that same kind of geographic concentration?
Yes. If you look at where the foreclosures are, they're really concentrated in Queens and specifically Southeast Queens, Jamaica area. Additionally, Central Brooklyn, East New York, those neighborhoods have a pretty high rate. Generally, over Staten Island dispersed and some parts of the North Bronx.
So you mentioned East New York, and that brings
Right.
me to the next question, which is we have this wave of rezonings that the mayor is talking about, East New York being the first one that was actually done. What's the interaction between neighborhoods that were really affected by the foreclosure crisis and those that are now potentially being affected for good or ill by rezoning? Is there much overlap?
In some ways. So I think what we're seeing in a lot of neighborhoods, they really went from being at the peak of the foreclosure crisis, like Bedford-Stuyvesant or East New York, to now new cycles of investment and gentrification and displacement very quickly. So to the extent that there's overlap with the rezoning neighborhoods, it's really more about looking, where is there a lot of investment happening? And I think especially with East New York, what we saw when the rezoning was announced, we immediately saw a spike in home flipping activities and a corresponding decrease in the use of mortgages to buy homes in East New York, which means that the people who are acquiring homes right now are not acquiring them to live in, they're acquiring them to invest in, and that's going to increase prices for anyone who wishes to purchase a home in that neighborhood.
What does it mean, though, for if you're a homeowner now in a situation like that? Obviously, it could be good news, right? Because the property value is higher. So,
Right.
I mean, if you're an incumbent homeowner, how does a rezoning or a general rise in development of property values, how does that affect you?
Right, so a rezoning or a general rise in property values is not going to displace a homeowner on their own. Obviously, there's a lot of other factors at play. For some homeowners, having property values rise can be a good thing, especially if you're looking to sell and retire, move away, do something with your equity, like invest in your grandchildren's college tuition or something like that. And in those ways, when we have homeowners in place in communities that are gentrifying, what that actually does is increases the economic diversity of a neighborhood, because mortgage payments are flat if you have a good mortgage and if you're not refinancing or doing some of these other things. And so that means that people can afford to live there for much lower than what a renter would be paying on the market. And there's another aspect of this that people often don't consider, but in New York City, one-family homes are relatively rare. Most homes that homeowners live in usually have one or two additional rental units. And even though these units are not rent stabilized, so landlords could charge whatever the market can bear for them, they actually tend to be some of the lowest rentals in the city. And when renters live in these units, they tend to stay longer and pay less. So when a homeowner needs to leave because they're in foreclosure, they can't handle their tax or water burden, they've been maybe scammed into signing something that they thought was going to save their home, but instead means that they're out on the street, their renter is displaced too, and it's extremely unlikely that that renter is going to be able to find something else, because without rent stabilization, there's no protection for them once the home is sold.
How do you think the push in some neighborhoods to regularize or legalize basement apartments fits into that? Would that make it easier for that homeowner and that renter to sustain that relationship? How would that affect their lot when a neighborhood begins to
Right.
develop?
So we support the BASE campaign, which is promoting the safe legalization of basement units. And I think there's a few things to recognize. The first is that a lot of people are living in basement units anyways. So by providing a framework to legalize these basements, you're not necessarily increasing density or bringing more people into a community. What you are doing is making the tenants safer, and you're also allowing the homeowner to be able to invest in their home, do things that might otherwise call city scrutiny on them. So for example, a lot of homeowners are in need of home repair resources, and the city provides a lot of home repair resources, but they can't go to homeowners who have illegal units in their home. And so by providing landlords a route to make their units legalized, you're actually making sure that the homeowner has a more stable funding stream so that they're able to keep their mortgage payments, pay their water and tax bills. You're also putting the tenant in a better place, first of all, and above everything else, because they're safer, because they have, they meet they're assured that they meet all fire codes, and they have status. They're no longer illegal. They can, they can maybe feel more empowered to make demands.
So I know that the center has talked a little bit about the potential for community land trusts to play an important role. And that's interesting to me because we've talked about that a lot at city limits, but almost exclusively from a renter standpoint. How do you think community land trusts might fit into your goals of encouraging, low and moderate working class people to be able to purchase and continue to own homes? How do they connect?
So, yeah, that's a great question. So in New York City, there's because of our obvious housing stock, there's a lot of attention to rental housing for low-income families or households. Nationally, though, the community land trust model is most commonly used with 1 to 4 single-family homes, basically. And single-family homes are a great homeownership. Affordable homeownership is a great use of the community land trust model, because it can really help us overcome some of the challenges that we've had in the past with affordable homeownership programs. There used to be, for example, with the Nehemiah homes or other larger developments, more opportunities for working and middle-class New Yorkers to buy homes. And that doesn't really happen today, and it's not as major a part of the de Blasio Affordable Housing Plan. But with the community, and one of the reasons for that is, the problem with conventional affordable homeownership development is that you really invest a lot of subsidy, but it only goes to one person, because once that homeowner is in their home for however many number of years, they can resell at whatever cost. And so you're kind of providing subsidy and a bit of a windfall to certain people who are lucky to have it. But with a community land trust model, you can actually keep the subsidy going by separating the control of the land and control of the structures. So the community land trust allows you to have community-controlled land and dictate what prices a home may be sold at, how much a price can appreciate over time, and by doing that provides homeownership opportunities that are more affordable than what someone could really get on the private market. So really it's targeting people for whom the market doesn't serve currently, and giving them an opportunity to build their assets, although not as much as they might had they been able to buy on the conventional market. However, when they sell, they are able to appreciate some wealth, and most people, when they leave community land trust homes, then can graduate to purchasing homes on the regular market. So basically, to kind of summarize, I know that was a very long answer.
No, it's helpful.
What it allows us to do is ensure that our investments in affordable home ownership are permanent and allow homes that are developed through this trust to be passed on from homeowner to homeowner, while also providing a means for the people who purchase these homes to have a low, stable monthly housing payment, and also to build wealth over time.
You referenced earlier Sandy. We're coming up, I guess, on the 5th anniversary of the storm. There's been a lot of news recently about the Build It Back program. Commissioner Peña Mora announcing his departure, not perhaps directly related to that. You've seen that program operate. What do you think about Build It Back and how it is currently working? And you mentioned also resiliency.
Right.
How does that fit into the recovery from Sandy? Where are we on that?
Right, so the Center for New York City Neighborhoods is actually a partner of Build It Back, and we've been working with the city since Sandy to stabilize homeowners and really assist them as they navigate the recovery and rebuilding process, because it's very complicated, and there's a lot of needs and a lot of counseling needs for homeowners, and so that's really been our role in the program. As we move forward, the challenge really is much more about long-term flood resiliency. And that's why we've really emphasized our work on flood insurance education and home resiliency counseling. We created a website, floodhelpny.org, which I recommend anyone who lives in New York City to check out, or anyone else who lives by the water. It's a great resource for people to look up their address and understand what their flood risk is currently, how it might increase over time, and steps they can take. And another thing that we've done, in addition to the flood insurance education, is create what we believe to be the first home resiliency counseling program in the country, where we're actually sending out engineers to people's homes to look at their structure, look at their elevation, and then meet with a housing counselor to think about what kind of investments in resiliency they can make to make their home safer in flooding, and also to save money on their flood insurance in the long term.
So as a last question, something we always talk about Stand Up Desk is the fact that we are in an election year, and it's a quiet election so far, but eventually people will start talking about issues related to the work that you do on foreclosure, resiliency, the life of these neighborhoods that currently afford opportunities to low and middle income people. What are some of the topics you hope candidates will be talking about? What are the policies you hope will be on the table when the campaign gets more fully underway?
Sure. So I would really like to see a conversation about the future of affordable homeownership in New York City. I don't think it's acceptable to just write it off and say we're going to only focus on renters, or it's too hard, it's too expensive, why bother? I think there are some great opportunities happening, and some that the de Blasio administration are currently leading. For example, they've announced a large push towards more community land trusts, and there's the new infill homeownership opportunities program that is creating new affordable homeownership opportunities. But I think we can think a little bit bigger. I mean, who doesn't want their children to be able to buy a home in the same neighborhood that they live, to be able to establish permanency, especially in the face of, rising rents, rising housing costs, and stagnant incomes. So I think that needs to be part of the conversation. And then also looking at what we can do to support some of the homeowners in our communities that are struggling. And this is where the city's water and tax policy really comes into play. So when homeowners become delinquent on their property tax or water bills, which actually a large number are, the city will eventually sell their debt to a private investor who can then charge very high interest rates and ultimately move to foreclose on their loans, which really exacerbates an already vulnerable homeownership situation. And there are places like Philadelphia where just this month they announced that they're implementing a new income-based water bill program, or other communities that are looking more at how to protect homeowners from property tax increases in gentrifying neighborhoods. So I think there's things that the city can be doing as well with their policies to think about how we can better support these people.
Caroline Nagy, thanks for coming on
Thank you.
and thinking bigger. Appreciate it.